Hi there, I'm Rupert Reed. This is where I talk to you directly about the great issues facing the world today. And today my topic is CoP29, which has just finished. What really happened at CoP29 in Baku in Azerbaijan? Well, one thing it's important to understand is that the conference, this latest climate COP, virtually ended in no agreement at all. The agreement that was achieved as a bare minimum, and many states either walked out or at least strongly objected to what was being agreed. So these negotiations are self-evidently in a very bad state. What was agreed? So there was a big, much trumpeted climate finance deal, hundreds of billions of pounds going to poorer countries to enable them to transform their economies in relation to climate. Can sound good. The devil is very much in the detail. One thing it's important to understand about these hundreds of billions of pounds is that with a lot of them, it's very unclear whether this is actually money that is being given, granted or not. And in fact, in most cases, it's pretty clear that it's not. These are various kinds of loans. This is a lot less money than it sounds like, if you see what I mean. The progress that was made, the limited but real progress that was made on the loss and damage fund shows this. Now, the loss and damage fund, this is money that went to countries, that goes to countries that are struggling to cope with and actually being compensated for real climate impacts that have actually happened. The amount of money in this fund is not billions of pounds, it's just millions of pounds, several hundred millions of pounds, but less than even 1 billion. And why? Well, basically the loss and damage money is real money. It's money that's actually being given to these countries. That's a lot harder for rich countries to give away than money that they're simply putting into loans, if you understand me. So the tiny scale of the loss and damage fund relative to the overall climate finance deal makes pretty clear how poor in practice the climate finance deal is. The vast majority of it is not being money that's actually being given to the poor countries who have caused so little of the climate crisis and are reaping so much of its whirlwind. Then there was also a big deal made about a lot of progress being made on carbon markets. I'll be brief here. I think that carbon markets have very little success in terms of their track record so far. We should be very skeptical that this carbon market success at this COP is actually going to mean anything good for the world. In other respects, this COP actually went backwards. Crucially, the Saudis intervened to try to stop the progress that was made at the last COP around transitioning away from fossil fuels from actually becoming a reality. This was a backsliding compared to COP28, and that is a very bad sign about the health of the COP process. One thing that this indicates pretty clearly is that the time has come for us to move beyond the COP process, a process which tries to see every single country in the world agreeing before you can actually get anywhere. Thus, it's very easy for people like the Saudis to stand in the way of any kind of progress. What we need are what is called climate clubs, groups of countries getting together, nimble coalitions of the willing, who are prepared to actually move well ahead of those laggards in the process, like the Saudis and a number of others. But we need to be honest about the limits of any theory of change that is centered, as mine in this domain is, around the possibility and the potentiality, the rise of climate clubs. Because if you don't, of course, include many of the world's big countries and big polluters, then that's a very big problem in relation to the true global dimensions of the climate challenge. And with the recent elections of Milei in Argentina and Trump in the USA, it's pretty clear that these countries will not be, if you will, shameable into progress on the basis of what climate clubs actually achieve. So we come back to the absolutely fundamental dimension of the climate crisis, which is what's called a collective action problem, or to be more accurate, a collective action more than problem, a collective action tragedy, a free rider more than problem. We need all the countries of the world, we do need them eventually, or at least most of them, to make significant progress if we're actually going to get anywhere. It's possible for single countries, more or less, to scupper the climate crisis situation that we're in, to make it absolutely impossible to get out of. I mean, if Brazil or the United States or Russia, if any of those countries basically decide we are going to try to destroy the world's climate, they can do it. And although the advantage of the Climate Club method is that you can get a long way with these smaller, nimbler coalitions of the willing, the true tragedy of the climate situation is that everybody gets the benefits from people reducing their greenhouse gas emissions, but a lot of those benefits don't go directly to the people who do the reduction of those greenhouse gas emissions. And thus the direct incentive on people to act adequately is not that great. We've come back really in the climate crisis, it seems to me, to the structure, the fundamental structure of this collective action tragedy. And what it means, frankly, is that the climate crisis is very unlikely to be in any meaningful sense fixed. Al Gore made some very trenchant remarks at the end of this COP, but among those remarks he said, "We can solve climate change." That's a direct quote. But the truth is we can't. We can't solve this. We can mitigate it. We can reduce harm. It may be possible, it might just be possible for us to make a lot of progress on acting as if this is an emergency and dealing with this predicament. That's going to be incredibly hard and the signs are very poor, but it might just be possible. But we can't solve this. We can't fix it. It's more than a problem. It's wicked. It's a predicament. It's something that we are, to some significant extent, stuck in. And it is crucial that we are honest about this so that we don't waste our energy, so that we don't maladapt, and so that we can feel the full emotional force of where we are at. Because where we are at is in a permanent crisis, a long emergency that is going to define all of our lives and those of our children and those of our grandchildren and so on, essentially forever. We need to feel the full emotional force of where we are at if we're going to act adequately upon it. We need that very badly for our own sake and for that of our children and their children. And what is this that we should be doing, that we should be staking our lives on in the absence of us being able to bet on international diplomacy actually fixing this? Well, it comes down to what we call transformative adaptation, which for the first time ever really actually kind of got a little bit sexy at COP29, which is a moment of hope. Transformative adaptation, as in my new book on this topic, strategic adaptation that seeks to be serious about where we need to go and how we get there. Adaptation in that we are adapting to, we are responding to our vulnerabilities, the impacts that are here, the worst impacts that are coming. And the great thing about adaptation is that it doesn't face the collective action more than problem that defines the decarbonization challenge. When you adapt, you see the benefits of it locally to where you are. Now, let me be clear, there are limits to adaptation. Not everything is adaptable to. Let me be clear that ultimately decarbonization is essential and needs to be pursued as part of any sane adaptation strategy. But let me also be clear, if you put all your eggs in the basket of decarbonization, they're going to be broken and you are going to be disappointed. This is what is happening so far. It will carry on happening. We need transformative adaptation, strategic adaptation, deep adaptation. These are the future. They are getting going. They are inspiring. They are possible. Everyone can take part in them in the communities where they live. We need these forms of adaptation much more than we need the essentially failed COP process or even an improved variant on it. So to finish saying to you quite directly, please put some of the eggs in your basket into transformative adaptation and strategic adaptation before it is too late.